I'm Scott L. Miller. It is Thursday night, and that means it is time for the Nicaragua live show, and we are running crazy late. We're going to be explaining what's going on this week, but let's get the word out there and let some people know that we are doing the show and making this all happen and getting people excited and all that good stuff. It is time. I just walked in the door, so I've not had a chance to do anything. So good time to get things going. And obviously, we're going to be doing a short show tonight because we have to because it's so late. So it is what it is, but let's get the word out there, let people know that we're doing this. And yeah, we're going to have that done in just a second. It just takes a minute to send these out to all the different groups. I've been in Managua all day running errands. And it was a lot of driving. So I'm tired and glad to be home. Did try out a new restaurant today, so that was cool. Always fun when I get to try something new out. Did a buffet today, which is kind of cool. We've nearly hit everyone at this point. All right, one last thing, getting it out on the expats group. So real quick, for those who don't know, while I'm posting this, just gives me something to talk about because I can't look at what you guys are saying while I do it. We do have a expats forum, if you haven't been on there, expats.nicaragua.com. That is the place to go and post your questions, hang out with people, learn about stuff. Definitely check it out if you've not been there. expats.nicaragua.com. Today's the 16th of April, 2026. Show is up. And we will get this link out there for everyone. If you heard me say it and don't know what we're talking about, that is the link. Get on there. Most of you are on there, of course. Definitely check it out. All right, everybody. Ibn al-Sham is here. Were you at the Galleria Santo Domingo with your family last Saturday night by the Chinese restaurant Shanghai? I don't believe I was. I was there probably 2 weeks ago, pretty close to the Shanghai. I have not been in the Shanghai recently. I have been to the Gallerias, but it shouldn't have been. Come here, dog. Oh my gosh, the dog, this puppy loves to bark. I don't believe I was there. Janet says, yay, I have at least not a whole half hour before my next thing. I saw a guy that looked like you walking near with his family as I was leaving. So, if I was there, it was on the first level, not the second level, so under Shanghai at Mugs. But that should have been 2 weeks ago, unless I'm crazy. But it's recently enough that maybe that's, it's me and my wife and my 2 kids. So there would have been 4 of us. Hey, come here. You have no one to bark at. There's no reason for that. We're here on the show. And here, you want to hop up and say hi to everybody? Yeah, instead of just saying hi from far away. There we go. Yes. Yes, Ramen. You got to touch the microphone? Yeah. Is that, you going to say hi? Yes, you're a handsome boy. Everybody likes seeing you. Yes. Mwah. If you would just not bark, you'd be perfect. That's not true. You bite a lot, but you are a sweet boy. We love you. Okay, now don't lick my microphone. Lending looks. Had friends surprised visit me from Australia. Went to Lake Managua, that's Choletlan, to eat by the restaurants. We all ordered cordon bleu. Where on Choletlan do they do cordon bleu? That's interesting. Very cool, though. I never have friends visit me. I say that. Brian visits me. But that's like it. There's basically no one. I did have my friend Ryan visited me 11 years ago, but not in a long time. But Brian within current times. And Kat did visit, and Kim. I guess we've had a couple. But it's not been very many. Ibn al-Sham says, yes, 4 people, a couple, 2 teenagers. Oh, a boy and a girl, if I remember correctly. That would not have been us. It's 2 girls, if you saw us. but we do go in that area. We did. Hey, you gotta stop. He's trying to get the big dog to play with him, the older dog, and she wants to sleep, so he's barking in her face. But I was here this past weekend. Yeah, it's been at least 2 weeks since I was in Managua, so I don't think that was us. What are you doing? This dog is out of control. That's very cool. Friends from Australia just dropping in to visit is pretty cool. I have a look-alike. That seems okay. You gotta go. Getting kicked out. No barking in here. This is a bark-free zone. Off you go. Get out. Get out. I love having lots of animals, but the dog's hobby is barking, which is a little bit rough to deal with at the best of times. It's unlikely I have a look-alike. I mean, do you have any idea what day it was? Can you pinpoint a date? Because I was there relatively recently. But the chances that I have a look-alike just seems really, really unlikely. Someone would have pointed them out, and they would have responded. Like, we would have made contact by now. It's such a small place. It just doesn't seem plausible. I love bark-free zone. Now he's just outside where he'll bark at everyone else. But at least then it's not my problem. I had the glorious thing today. I stopped by NVO's Fast Track and picked up a couple miscellaneous things. And I'm starting to really collect chargers and cables. So today's load included 2 superchargers. These are 65 watts with 2 connectors. And I got, one of them is in use and plugged in, and 4 additional USB-C connectors. And then for my kids, I bought them a pack of 6 more charging cables, because the bolt, so 3 for each. It's like a 1 meter, a 2 meter, and a 3 meter, I think, for each of my daughters. And they come in red, blue, and silver. They're actually kind of cool. But it's funny. Living like I think in general people have figured out that chargers and charging cables are an important part of a happy life, kind of just across the board. But when you live so far away and those things are so difficult to get, it changes a little bit. And having a little bit of a backlog of cables and chargers is kind of nice, like having a stockpile. So when a cable wears out, you're like, just gotta get a fresh one, because we go through so many and everybody needs them, and they're, we can get them in stores here, but it's relatively difficult to come up with a fair number of these kinds of things. Like if you have any kind of special connector at all, or older in any way, or brand new, it all becomes, oh, how do you get that? You kind of can't. And so recently, I bought a big pack of USB-C to USB-C for me, very similar to the one that I got for my daughters. And I got them, I'm looking, yeah, this entire order has arrived. So these are the ones I was questioning. I got them 6 Apple chargers, and I got me the ones I just showed you, and then some laptop sleeves, and then we have a laptop somewhere, and then I don't remember if these have arrived yet or not. I have another pack of cables for me coming, because I just don't want to run out of cables. And recently the dog chewed a few, and just chewing a few caused me to be like, I need backup cables. So now I have like this stockpile. And I also bought a compressed air duster, the kind that is electric that you charge, um, because buying compressed air here is expensive, and the place is so dusty that you really want to dust all the time. Um, and compressed air, if you use it all the time, gets really expensive because you could go through, I don't know, maybe $1 a day. I mean, it's not terrible, but $1 a day is pretty noticeable as a cost for a cleaning thing, right? And I really would like to, if I had unlimited compressed air, I would just dust things off with that constantly. Keyboards, electronics, definitely my computers. And I have lots of computers, every laptop. I would just blow the dust out of them every day, make them more efficient, make them last longer. But because it's so hard to get canned air, we basically never do it. And so computers overheat, they take more power to run, and so forth. And so I'm excited. I've never bought one of these. They cost like the equivalent of 2 cans of air. I'll pay for itself in a weekend. So anyway, love the Mark Free Zone. I'm a drunk guy. What's up? Missed the last live. Glad all is well. Leaving the great land of Nicaragua for a month, but already can't wait to be back. Well, have a safe trip. Hopefully you're not gone too long. Words are weapons. Love your page. Thank you for the info. I will get a hotel in Managua. Excellent. And try to figure out the rest of my trip. Brent says, I would most likely only be able to talk people into visiting me in Costa Rica since Nicaragua is so dangerous, which of course is ironic. Haha. By the way, hola, hola. Robin Hindall says, when you renewed your passports in Managua, are they only good for a year, or are you able to renew them for longer? All passport renewals, I mean, as an American, right? So this is definitely different for every person. Passport renewals are always 10 years. What we can't do is expedite. But we can order the longer books, which I did because we travel. And all adult passports in the U.S. are 10 years. There's no shorter ones. There are shorter ones for children. So my youngest still has a 5-year. She's just barely too young that she can't get the 10-year. It's just based on, your face changes when you're a kid. My eldest, still a child, is old enough that she was able to get the 10-year. So she and my wife and I are on our 10-year visas, and my youngest is on her 5-year. But those are the only options. It doesn't matter where you get them. U.S., Nicaragua, the moon, it's all the same. Walter Hartwell White, 99.1. My name is Walter Hartwell White. I got it right when it was the harder way to read it. I live at 308 Negro Lane, Albuquerque, New Mexico. To all law enforcement entities, this is not an admission of guilt. I am speaking to my family now. Boy, that took me a second to figure out what that was. I'm a drunk guy. I sent like a couple hundred HDMI to HDMI, 50 of each USB-C and C, USB-A to Lightning for personal use. Had my son bring me one of those dusters from Amazon last month. Useful as heck. Oh my gosh. It's the simple little things, right? It's like, powerful computers. We can get them. Laptops, I can get one. But, your lifestyle changes. You don't care so much. But boy, do you care about charging things. And having nice cables. It's so funny. I just care about very different things. And you learn to spend so much less, and think about your purchasing more. It's very funny. It's insane how expensive electronics and so many items are here in Nicaragua. Even if they're made in China, I don't know how most Nicaraguans afford them. Yeah, it's true. One of the things that keeps Nicaraguans poor is bad shopping. But remember, there aren't expensive electronics in Nicaragua. There's bad shopping in Nicaragua. Just like in the U.S. And this is misleading, and it's because we have a bad perspective on it. If you moved to the United States and had no idea how Americans shop and came from a place that shopped very differently, it has to be that combination, you would very likely not realize how to shop like an American. You'd shop like whatever you were used to, and America would seem outrageously expensive. And you'd be like, how do Americans live like this? Why do they put up with it? Everything's so expensive. But those of us who grew up in America or lived there for a long time or shopped a lot, very quickly would be like, whoa, dude, you don't know how to shop. You walked into Best Buy? That's your shopping? No, right? I feel like there's so many things you need to know about how Americans get prices. First of all, Amazon, Walmart, these are starting points. Everyone's aware of them. You're into electronics, you got to know Micro Center. You got to understand how to buy direct from manufacturers and a bunch of things, right? As a camera guy, the way that I buy cameras is very different from normal people. When I was really into high-end audio, you don't buy that stuff the way normal people do. Normal people in America will pay double for a lot of those things. The average consumer in the US, even knowing quite a bit about how to buy things in America, still isn't an expert at shopping and will often spend 5 or 10% more than they need to. Now, there's some way to get really, really, really good prices in many cases, like start your own distributor or something. We're not talking about that extreme, but most people are not shaving off the last little bit and are often tricked into paying for something that doesn't exist, right? Well, I like shopping at this place and I'm willing to pay a premium because I've got this salesman who takes care of me. No, he doesn't. He's the one creating the extra cost, right? He probably sold you something you didn't need and convinced you to pay too much for it. That's the opposite of a consultant, right? That's a con man. And I understand his job is to sell you things, but you need to understand his job is to sell you things. And the first step of understanding how to be good purchasing is not to do those things. So those are just skills you get, right? But the amount that an average American goes off course on an average American purchase, maybe 10%. Nicaraguans have a lot farther to go off course just because there are some problematic opportunities and some opaque, difficult means of obtaining the things that they want. But both Nicaraguans and expats that live in Nicaragua who do know, for the most part, how to shop, pretty much universally report that products in Nicaragua are cheaper than in the U.S., not more expensive. But it doesn't always appear that way because Americans tend to try to compare, well, if I bought it this way in America and I bought it this way in Nicaragua, it's more expensive. But this is a great conversation, right? We're talking not about tariff busting, direct shipment Chinese goods where Nicaragua's working around a U.S. tariff. That would be where we get big savings. And I know my Bolivia office pays 30% less than my U.S. office for the same computers. Think about that. 30% less. And that's with the American office knowing what they're doing, or pretty well, having access to warehouses, being a distributor, working with distributors directly, having access to multiple direct resellers, being resellers themselves. They have all the licensing. They can do all those things. They can work through different districts in the U.S. They can do a lot of things to find the lowest price channel, and still the Bolivian office pays 30% less for their computers for the exact same model, right? And it's just knowing how to shop combined with local tariffs and shipping and logistics and all those things. And Bolivia is not a super cheap market because it doesn't have its own ports. So when you realize just how much difference there is there, we're expecting a lot of that to come to Nicaragua in time as we learn how to take advantage of the new arbitrage and logistics and such that's happening. But ignoring those kinds of advantages and only looking at products being sold in the United States, most everything, and I'm not saying they're the best, and I'm certainly not promoting using them, but most Americans who are not putting in a great deal of effort to get the best electronics prices are going to use resources such as Amazon and Walmart, right? Not endorsing them, not recommending them, not trying to promote them in any way. But let's face it, Americans do that stuff regularly. And that's how they get the prices that they get. Not the absolute best, but really good. Well, Nicaraguans have access to Amazon and Walmart the same as Americans do, but they have access at slightly, very slightly, lower prices. So with rare exception, not super rare exception, I'm not saying 1% of the time, I'm saying let's say 15% of the time. 15% of the time, there's going to be a product that we can't actually get cheaper here in Nicaragua by ordering it from Amazon. But 80 to 85% of the time, the majority of the time, most products, we are going to save pennies, maybe $1 by buying through Amazon in the U.S. Not even shopping at Amazon in different countries, just buying at Amazon in the U.S. So we have access to all that shopping that happens in the U.S., often at equal or lower prices than Americans do. Once you realize that, we can buy things at the same prices as Americans, essentially always, but also have access to like direct Chinese shopping, that means that we are cheaper. We have to be. Mathematically, it's unstoppable, right? Because if you can get it at X price in America, we can get it at X or X minus something. Not much minus, just something. He said, but especially new clothing is so expensive everywhere, especially if a brand sold in the U.S. I saw an Eddie Bauer shirt that is $17 on Amazon. It's $65 here in Nicaragua. Even a body lotion. See, that's a misleading thing. You're right if you're buying it wrong in Nicaragua. But if you saw it on Amazon for $17, that means I can get it in Nicaragua for $17. Right? When you see it for $17 on Amazon, you can't walk into the local Main Street store. So I grew up around Geneseo, New York, right? My dad lives there. He's probably watching right now. So if my dad walked into a clothing shop that ordered Eddie Bauer clothing from somewhere, they're not an Eddie Bauer distributor, they're not an outlet, they're not in any way associated, they're just a store that sells Eddie Bauer stuff that they got somehow. New in this case, but they sell it, right? Chances are the price on that would be very, very high. But he wouldn't do that, because if he wanted that shirt, he would go on Amazon like you did and pay $17. If you come to Nicaragua, the exact same thing happens. If you go to an unassociated local store where you were paying quadruple for the privilege of not going online, not needing to order it from Amazon, wanting to see it in the store, hold it up and look at it, you're going to pay, just like in the U.S., a massive premium. Maybe more of a premium, but it doesn't matter because that's not the base price. But just like in the U.S., where it's $17 on Amazon, here in Nicaragua, it's $17 on Amazon. There's something that we do where when we're in Nicaragua, we treat the online shopping as not an option. But when we're in the United States, we treat it as an obvious option. Even though in both cases, it's equally accessible, and here in Nicaragua, it's just the tiniest bit cheaper. Just the tiniest bit. And only most of the time. So why do we price one mechanism in the US and not its equivalent mechanism in Nicaragua, especially when its equivalent mechanism is literally the same mechanism? We're not even talking about something like Amazon. We're actually saying I could go on Amazon here in Nicaragua and buy the thing. If you sent me a link, I could buy it for the same price as you here, except my actual final delivery fee would be cheaper normally. And so that's why we say things are cheaper here. Because when we compare all the options that are reasonably accessible to us in the U.S. and all the options that are reasonably accessible to us in Nicaragua, Nicaragua has more, and most importantly, the ones that are cheapest in the U.S. we have as well. We literally have the same services. I can buy directly from Walmart. I can buy directly from Amazon. I do buy directly from Chinese camera makers and stuff. And so it's very important to phrase that the luxurious act of retail therapy, that is walking into stores and spending money as if it doesn't matter, like many Americans do, like in America will cost a pretty penny compared to frugal shopping, even for the same items. Probably here in Nicaragua, the markup is higher. And that's reasonable for a lot of reasons. But when it comes to low-cost shopping, it doesn't, right? When Nicaraguans tell me, oh, I spent $800 on this old junky laptop every time, I'm like, why did you do that? Because you could have gotten a new one for $350, right? I'm buying laptops here for $343. Brand new, top-end names, not super high specs, but totally decent machines at very reasonable prices, right? Not crazy prices that the U.S. doesn't get, just the same prices that the U.S. gets, right? But we're getting them in paradise. So it's, in recent times, I have yet to have a product not be essentially the same price. Normally we're cheaper, but it's all within 50 cents, right? We're not talking about numbers worth caring about in most cases. Larry says, just jumped on, been on the phone with Vonage in the last hour and a half. Hopefully my VIP account won't be suspended for the late join. I don't know, Larry. We'll talk to people, see what we can do. Larry drove by the new market yesterday. It's very clean. It is. It looks great. I need to hop in there. I'm so busy. Brent says, my last trip there, I met a guy at Mano a Mano who was on his way back to the Netherlands to get investment money to build a beach hotel bar in Ometepe. I see his Instagram that it's up and running, and it looks like it's doing well. New Amigos. Oh, I've seen that one. I didn't realize you had met him. I don't know the guy, but I know New Amigos. That's awesome that he got it going so quickly. Ivan says, I need to watch again your Amazon video to learn and teach my Nicaraguan friends to buy from there instead of paying outrageous prices at the shopping malls here. The biggest thing is definitely that the number of Americans who make these massive shopping blunders feels to us like a small percentage. And the number of Nicaraguans who make these massive shopping blunders feels quite high. However, I don't know if that is actually true. I think it's true. So I'm not saying that I'm like, oh, I'm convinced this isn't true, it just feels that way. No, it's probably true. But when it's Nicaraguans, what I find is I'm super frustrated and disheartened because it's very poor Nicaraguans constantly making these terrible shopping decisions. And when I'm in the United States, it's pretty consistently quite wealthy Americans who simply were born with a silver spoon and have no concept of money. In which case, in the Americans' case, I generally am like, wow, these people are just a bag of rocks and super privileged, and I don't care. In fact, I kind of feel great that capitalism has taken advantage of them and lessened their wallets, which, yeah, some billionaire is making the money, but clearly these are people who didn't earn or deserve any amount of money. If this is the kind of money they're wasting, great. Right? They have no excuse because if you're a rich American, you have access to people to give you the knowledge that common sense should have given you. But for Nicaraguans, this is much less obvious. You can't just go to every neighbor and be like, how did you get a cheap laptop? Oh, you didn't know? Amazon. Ooh, what's Amazon? Tell me about this. Right? Like they have much less opportunity. Some of them definitely get that opportunity. Right? There are definitely Nicaraguans who are like, hey, my neighbor got a $300 laptop, brand new, like shipped to his house. What? How did he do that? I don't know. Let's go over it. And they walk over and he's like, let me tell you about Amazon. And they're like, this is glorious, right? So that does happen, but it's very little. Brent says, I guess you can order stuff from eBay also. I would think so. That's definitely one that I'm not sure about. I can tell you that Etsy does not like Latinos getting their products, so they will block you. Yes, the shopping malls here, the entire shopping mall concept here is for the ultra rich, and it's important to contextualize a little bit here. And I've talked to a lot of Nicaraguans about this, that there are so many things that are outrageously priced here. It could be hotels, restaurants. Obviously, most things are priced really good, and most of the expats pay really good prices for things. But there is a very noticeable set of prices going on where things are just absurd. You go into some restaurant and you're like, this cost way out of whack. Double all the other restaurants? It's nice. It's fine. Why does it cost double? Right? Why is this activity so expensive when all its comparable activities are cheap? And people refer to it as Managua Premium or Fresa Nicas, strawberry Nicaraguans. And they are terms for Nicaraguans who are incredibly wealthy and don't use their wealth wisely. They throw it around to be flashy for the most part. And there's a culture here, as is very common in up-and-coming economies, where people who don't have a lot of money, when they first get that money, spend it on spending it, right? They spend it for the sake of spending it, just to show off that they've acquired money and they can throw it away because they aren't sure what to buy. They don't know how to use it in a good way because they've, imagine if you've barely ever had enough money to function and one day you have an extra $1,000 per month. That's not going to be clear to you what's a good way to use that in most cases. It would be great if it was, but generally it's not. If you give someone who comes from a poor background a windfall, they are almost always going to be lost. as to what to do and struggle with doing something good with it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't come up with ways to help poor people have more money. Of course you should. It is sadly used as an excuse not to. But it is a very useful or a very important thing to understand, that this is likely what's going to happen. And you see the same thing in the United States, where you have types of products that are meant specifically to be total garbage and would be embarrassing to people who grew up with plenty of money, but are considered very, very important for people who come from generally poor backgrounds, especially minorities, and want to show off that they are so rich that they don't have to have any sense about quality products or value, right? And we've heard of this entire range of things. It's called designer goods, right? Whether it's designer handbags or designer jeans or just Louis Vuitton or Chanel or whatever, all of these brands exist for people who were abjectly poor, who are now in this confused state, which is in places like the United States, a huge percentage of the population, of a very large population, and the amount of money they tend to have tends to be relatively large. And so if you go and look at, and they did great research on this, right? If you go to majority populations in segments that have had money through generations, so people grew up and learned from people who grew up with not a ton of money, but enough money that they could easily buy those things. One of the things that they all intrinsically know is they know not to buy those things, and they find that owning them is kind of embarrassing, right? I don't want to wear clothing by a recognized brand in any meaningful way. I don't mind a brand that's small and doesn't cost very much, and someone's like, oh, that's that really cheap brand that makes, bamboo shirts. Okay, yes, that's fine to know. I don't care. But I don't want a shirt that has like a big logo on it. I'm not paying to be a billboard for somebody. If they want to pay me, I will wear, right? If you're, I don't know, Nautica, are they even still around? I have no idea. If you're Nautica and you want to pay me $100 a month to wear nothing but your clothes with your brand on it, absolutely. I'm easily swayed with money. But I will pay less if I get a product that has someone's brand name on it, because I'm running ads for someone and it's embarrassing. Not super embarrassing, but embarrassing. Most people understand, oh, you just found it in the secondhand store, so that's why you have it. That's just silly, whatever. But it's embarrassing for whoever bought it the first time. To be paying extra to be advertising for someone, right? If you think about it, once you put any common sense on it, it's like, ooh, that is super weird, right? To want that. But if you're coming from especially minorities who are in a first generation of having extra wealth, any amount of disposable income, often the idea of, what do you do with disposable income? You invest it. Right? Oh, they don't know how to invest. Their parents didn't know how to invest. They didn't have money to invest. They don't have this, generational knowledge of what to do wisely with money, right? And I luckily came from, my grandparents had no disposable income. My parents had some, and they luckily figured a lot of things out and passed on a lot of knowledge, and partially coming from a very frugal Swiss background, right, it kind of eliminated some of those things. Like, I think even had we been super poor, the idea of paying for a brand would still have been deeply ingrained as shameful, right? How can you justify spending money on that, right? But because of the cultural background, because we were taught like how to think about money, and so simple things like, oh, you have a spare $5,000. You would feel much better about that if that money was invested than if you just, threw it away at looking funny, right? No one's going to care. But if you have an excess $100,000, $200,000, well, you could buy a business that interests you, and there's joy to that. Right? Maybe you're going to own a restaurant. And it doesn't have to make money, but it should. But if it doesn't make money, you still own a restaurant. Like that gives you clout in your community. It gives you employees. It gives you a place to go eat. It gives you a place to hang out. You can use it for things, right? And the same thing, like, oh, you have an extra $1 million. Well, go build a hotel in a place you want to visit. And then hopefully it makes you money. But when it's not making you money, go stay in your own hotel. And instead of paying $150 a night to stay someplace you don't own, pay nothing when it's not full, and stay in your own place as much as you want, anytime you want, right? And there's a joy, not for everyone, I'm sure, but for a lot of people, there is a really strong joy at staying in your own property, right? Wow, imagine if you owned the Hampton Inn down the street, right? And you needed to, family's going to come stay there, or you're going to go stay in it, and you go in your hotel. When it's just a hotel, you walk around going, this isn't mine, but I'm allowed to walk through the halls because I'm paying $100 a night. But when it's yours, every bit of it is yours. Sorry for the microphone. Right? The office is yours. The gym is yours. The pool is yours. You can go use those things all day, every day, if that's what you want. You can stay in it whenever you want. Like it's different, right? And at no point are you like, ooh, I'm going to get caught for being here too much. It's yours. Use it how you like. These are different ways of looking at excess money. Whereas if you don't have that deep background, you have a tendency to be like, you know what? A little bit more expensive car would be a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, but $20,000-$30,000 more for a little bit more comfortable for something that wears out. Yeah, that's wow. You don't have excess $100 million. You have an excess 80,000, and you're gonna put that's where a big percentage of it is gonna go. Wow, right? So like that thought process is very different. So Nicaraguans often have the same problem. They get a little bit of excess money, and they don't have an easy. First of all, they don't have easy ways to invest. And many of them have no idea what they're going to invest in if they're going to go like start a business. They haven't thought about it. They weren't prepared. And so you have an extra $500. What do? Well, the one way to get joy from it right now is to, one, go buy some things you weren't going to buy before, hotel rooms, extra food, extra beer. But once you get past that, if you still have money, then going to a place that's more expensive at least allows you to be like, I got to go hang out in this place that's more expensive. Right, and until deep, not institutional but generational, emotional knowledge about how to think about money and how to enjoy money not being wasted becomes ingrained, it's just expected that you're going to go through this. So you will find Nicaraguans intentionally double, triple, quadruple paying for things for no discernible reason, and I work in business. American businesses do this on a regular basis, and it's just, they get emotional. The people working in a business get so emotional about shopping for someone else that they make these kinds of blunders. That's crazy. That is deep, deep insanity around the shopping experience. That a lot of people experience. Ibn al-Sham says, I always bring 2 suitcases full of brand new clothes to gift away here that I buy from overstock liquidation stores in Florida for only $2 each. That's awesome. A lot of the clothing that gets down here like that's actually where it comes from, and often it's brought down for free. That comes in huge packets, and they bid on it. But local companies bid on it. So he says, speaking of wise spending, I was at Vivian Palace Hospital all day today doing all kinds of preventative diagnostics tests for men over 50 for under $600. The cafeteria food was great and cheap too. Awesome. Brent says, just consulted with the all-knowing ChatGPT overlord. It says, yes, ordering from eBay and shipping to Nicaragua via a third party, no problem. I would definitely say it has no idea and just spewed random crap. There is absolutely no possibility that ChatGPT had a basis for saying that. I'm not saying that eBay won't ship here, but so the assumption is that eBay will ship to a third-party freight forwarder. Many of those companies just won't. Not most, not like half, but maybe 10% of companies that ship that. They have no interest in Americans who travel or non-Americans buying from them. Weird, I know, but actual thing. Jan says, well, I did buy a Burberry shawl here in a secondhand store for 200 quarterbuzz because it could be warm on an airplane. It was new with tags. Okay, Burberry stuff for 200 quart is pretty cool. That's about $6. I agree with name brand logos. I don't wear anything with a big brand name logo, especially flashy designer clothes. Diego's here. He says, hey, sorry, Diego. I actually picked up my phone to text you because I was in Doral just 2 hours ago and was hoping to hang out, but I had to get here to do the live stream and had tickets that I had to do. So I ended up being very, very busy with a phone that was dying, and I just didn't have time to get a hold of you. So sorry. Now, the advantage, as Janet points out, to shopping here is that once in a while there are really cheap deals here, right? I know people who know how to shop here and know what not to get, and they're often picking up quite a bit of stuff at prices we would not see in the United States and it is a buddy of mine who does this in the United States. He operates a company that collects clothing that is donated and he ships it here. Unrelated to me, he's been doing it for decades. His dad owned the company. I think they started doing it when I was like 5. So it's an old family business, and we know that that's a process. So they ship down, pallets of used clothing in their case. And Janet got something overstocked or whatever that was new, but he ships down pallets of used stuff. And so we'll find clothing from like my hometowns running around in the neighborhoods here. It's very weird, right? I don't get too much from my hometown, surprisingly, but once in a while, like small village schools near where I grew up, I'll see a T-shirt on the street. But recently, I saw so my wife is from the outskirts of Utica, New York, and Utica College someone was wearing, and I was like, what? And there was one recently that someone had my dad's like baseball team on it, and I'm like, hey, can I get a picture? People are always like, oh, I guess, okay. But it is weird that so many things come from where I'm from in New York to show up here. But so there's a ton of that stuff coming down, and they're often, you can buy them here for $1 or $2. But new stuff comes down to an overstock, and so it's not that you can't shop in person here. It's that you have to understand that you only want to shop in person when it's going to give you a good deal, and look on Amazon and that stuff for better prices. But a good example, Shein, which a lot of people use, and here there's Shein shops. It used to be that you bought it from the U.S., so you'd ship from China to the U.S. and then U.S. to here, and you'd pay that extra hop. So the Shein was costing just a little bit more than it did in the U.S. But now we can order Shein, in theory, direct from China and lower the logistics cost and completely remove the tariff, making it much cheaper than in the U.S. So a lot of those products, if you know how to order them, are now available at rock bottom prices compared to what the U.S. pays. I always remove price tags before bringing the clothing and merchandise here because I've been told it can be confiscated at the airport and they can charge me taxes assuming I'm trying to resell. That is correct. You could especially if you have a bulk of it and it's new, it is fine to bring new clothing, but at some point they're going to be like, you have a store in your bag, right? And it often throws off Americans who are like, this is an amount I often travel with, or this is not that much more than my normal, and they're like, they think I could become a store. And it's like, but you could. One packed piece of luggage is enough clothing to start a small store here. Not a very big one, not a very good one, but it is enough to start a store. You could put a neighbor out of business with one luggage worth of cheap stuff you got, from the U.S. Oh, all my neighbors collected their stuff, gave it to me for free. I'm bringing it down in a suitcase. I can go disrupt my local neighborhood. That's not something they want to be able to have happen. That's a pretty long shot one. But the thing that I talk about is what if I, as an American who could travel back and forth, what if they didn't have restrictions on what could be brought in luggage or the number of electronics that you're allowed to have, and airplane prices stayed like they were, and so forth. The local Nicaraguans have little ability to sell, say, laptops without basically doubling the price. There's a lot of good reasons why this happens. Warehousing it, buying it early, all kinds of things. Interest rates being what they are here, very, very high. So it's very difficult to run a store. They struggle a lot, and their volume is very low. There aren't very many people buying things, so things sit on the shelf. You have to have expensive staff sitting around doing nothing. It's not like in the US where, oh my gosh, our tech is expensive, but he's mostly busy all day. No, my buddy Samir, who is a tech at one of those places, he can sit for hours at a time without any customers. That makes him really expensive compared to the product, which means one way or another, any product that they sell has to cover his cost and the cost of the other people in that shop who are sitting around being idle during all that time. So that's really difficult to price compete. Plus, how do they get those laptops? Well, they have to go on Amazon. They have to figure out how to buy them. They have to ship them down. They have to get them ahead of time, blah, blah. I, as an American, with access to an American visa and knowing how to shop, if you wanted me to be your private shopper, I could be like, hey, so you were going to spend $700 on this laptop. I can get you a better one for $600. Is that something you're interested in? And they'd be like, yes. I'd be like, okay. And if I did that, let's say with 2 people in a day, just 2 people, I will make $500 over the actual price of the laptops. If I could order them in bulk, I'd be all set. If I could bring 4 laptops back in luggage, I could hop a plane, fly to Texas for $130 one way and $70 back. And for $200, in which I got airline miles, right? Using a travel credit card, getting a few points. I fly into Texas, walk into Micro Center, pick up 4 of those laptops, and fly back. Just bringing a backpack of low-end entry-level laptops, I could instantly get $500 profit and have 2 more laptops ready to sell. So I could end up generating $1,000 of profit on the things during the flight minus the $200 ticket that a Nicaraguan can't get. That would absolutely cripple the local economy from being able to have any expertise or sell anything, because I could undercut the local sellers while still making wild profits so high it would justify me as a working CIO to be like, that could be my full-time job, right? There's a reason they don't allow you to do that, because 1, I would figure out how not to have to fly to do that, and 2, I would just fly up, get a bunch of stuff, and I could do that every day. And in theory, with you get 4 of those, you get 4 tablets, you get 4, without doing any crazy number of things, one person with a packed backpack could be generating $1,000 a day completely on the arbitrage of not paying Nicaraguan tariffs or taxes. So not only would the stores be missing out, so would the government, right? So they don't let those things happen. By the way, Ibn al-Sham just joined our community here on YouTube. I don't know if it pops up for everyone, but it did for me, and thank you so much. We don't get too many new members these days. It really, really helps when people do that. It helps with the baseline of what we make here and just makes us a lot more visible. So thank you so much. That really does make a big difference. And for anyone who's wondering, on the show, there should be a join button kind of down here-ish somewhere. And you can just join there, and no particular special perks, but it's a great way to really support the community. It makes a big difference. Brent says, is it worth it to go to the massive mercados of Managua to get a better selection when shopping, or is it basically the same selection available in Leon, clothing, home goods, etc.? If you're looking for simple stuff, you're probably going to do just as well in Leon. You'll never cover the cost of your gas or time to go to Managua. If you're looking for anything that's specialty, you're almost certainly going to be better off going to Managua, because they basically act as the national distributors, and so you can get things you would never imagine at really good prices direct, and more selection and stuff by going into Managua. Diego says, I know people whose business is that they are called personal shoppers, going to the States and buying things from people and bring them here. Oh, absolutely. They do exist. But they are very limited, and the government doesn't care if you're doing it on a one-to-one basis. Like in the U.S., we have personal shoppers, and no one cares. It's like, I would like you to go shopping for me. Okay, right. The difference is a personal shopper doing that, coming into Nicaragua, can only bring one laptop. They can only bring one this, one that. Like, it's very minimal, and they have a lot of overhead to do it. But if I was able to bring in multiple electronics of the same thing that have really high markup, then that's where you end up with these big numbers that disrupt things. I do think there needs to be some mechanisms for just general better shopping. There is some spaces where I think a lot of people struggle with, I'm not sure how to do that, I don't know how to make this work really well, right? And having a service of some sort that assists with that could be sensible, but it's also always a moving target. There's risks with it, right? Just like that personal shoppers going to the States, you take a risk that, they get detained and they're stuck there. Inclement weather causes their flight not to be able to go, or they're not able to find the things that they need, or you need to keep them there. Now suddenly they're in hotels and all kinds of stuff. Hopefully most of them have family up in the States or whatever, and are going to stay with people and making a trip of it rather than whatever. It says, if you don't mind buying used merchandise, the mega stores have some incredibly good quality items like stainless steel pots and pans, and even Italian plates, etc. The mega stores. You mean the mega stores here in Nicaragua? There are deals out there for sure, and I'm happy with used on just about everything. I'm a big used products guy. Obviously, I like new, but steel, yeah. Is Spirit really down for the count this time? I have not heard anything other than my father saying the same thing, like, oh, we heard it might go bankrupt, but it's been bankrupt. Like, I don't think that that's a real threat. I don't know what the actual deal is. I know that they're still advertising flights and stuff. I know that there's fear that the U.S. pricing is going to skyrocket, no pun intended, due to fuel cost, which could cause some big problems. But I've not heard anything. I've been in the car all day, so I'm going to look up the news. It's okay. So this is what it actually says in the headlines. Rising fuel costs threaten Spirit Airlines bankruptcy exit plan. That is, now, according to ABC, okay. MSN says Spirit Airlines could liquidate as early as this week. Sources say, ABC says Spirit reportedly on the verge of shutting down amid bankruptcy. Good Morning America says the potential of Spirit Airlines liquidation would be a gut punch. Definitely horrible news for travelers, especially for me, as I'm just about to do another trip to the U.S., which I was expecting not to do, and we were hoping to fly Spirit, and may not be able to, waiting to find out. He says they'll probably be acquired by a bigger airline. Probably not, because that's what they tried to do. That's why they're in bankruptcy, is they wouldn't let them be. So it's unlikely. Silver J56 says, hi, how's it going? If they allowed them to buy the airlines, so the thing is that the U.S. government is trying to create monopolies because the monopolies pay bribes. That's about it, right? Like there's no candy coating it. They get bribes to avoid capitalism in a free market, and Spirit is one of my most obvious current. An airlines that was doing so well, it was trying to grow and do all this great stuff, leading prices, great service, consistently really good, and just constant. The amount of people who are paid by the other airlines, paid to badmouth them when they had a really clear plan to improve air travel in the U.S. The government stepped in and blocked free trade in the U.S. market to make sure that the overpriced monopolies maintained control and wouldn't let competitive airlines come up. Like, it's rough. Talking about fuel, I was lol seeing my U.S. family freak out because it took more than $25 to fill their car. They were freaking out for $3 to $4 a gallon. They have no clue what expensive gas is. Yeah, the U.S. subsidized gas is surprisingly cheap. What's amazing is when I first moved to Nicaragua, it was more expensive in the U.S. And then it has gotten really cheap, and now it's coming back, and people just lose their minds. They're so used to it being so ridiculously cheap. That's why Americans don't handle Europe well. Because like Nicaragua is still pretty decently cheap for a lot of places. And a friend of mine who lived here part-time, she's from Canada, has spent quite a bit of time here. She's currently living in Australia, and she just filled up her car, and filling up her car in Australia was $116. MJS213, ¿qué onda, bro? Ando viendo si me jalo 2 semanas para Nicaragua. Pero escuché que la cosa anda pesada con broncas y pandillas. ¿Qué tan cierto es ese rollo? Real quick, Spirit Airlines, this just happened? Oh no, well, 2 weeks ago. Spirit Airlines en route to Detroit makes emergency landing in Rochester. Oh, news from my hometown. At Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport. That's my hometown airport. That's not very much news, but that is what just popped up as I was trying to look up the Spirit stuff. MJS is asking if there is stuff with like gangs and trouble. Who the heck told you there were gangs? This is Nicaragua. Oh, there are no gangs. That's not a thing. No es cierto, no hay problemas de pan dollars. There's no problem with the bread dollars here. I don't know what he was trying to say. I know some friends from Spain that drive to Portugal to fill up on gas. I mean, a lot of Spain touches Portugal. Where I grew up, the Canadians used to drive to the U.S. to fill up on gas when I was little. No, MJS, there are... I mean, what gangs are there? So first of all, nothing's getting rough. The place it's getting rough is in North America. There are no gangs. That's not a thing. The only trouble we have is U.S. stuff. Someone definitely was pulling your leg and thought you didn't know anything about Nicaragua. Yeah. You come here specifically to get away from the gangs in trouble. We actually did a video on this, that there's more gangs in trouble in Canada than in Nicaragua. And not even joking, like, for sure. Like, you know, we're not one of the drug countries. But Americans quite often get really upset about Nicaragua not being a U.S.-controlled narco state. And so they push a narrative because they don't like countries that don't deal drugs to the U.S. It's kind of like a light version of the opium wars with China. Diego says, my phone autocorrected pandillas to pan dollars. To be frank, I do write more English than Spanish. Oh, to be fair, I do. To be frank, To be fair, I do write more English than Spanish. Still, pan dollars is not really a thing. Pan dollars is as much a thing as gangs in Nicaragua. But that is a good point that people should have ready, right? America and Canada are getting so scared of the gangs that they export that they're starting to have to fabricate them to like try to soften the blow of how bad it is at home. Because we're hearing a lot of problems in North America from the gangs, and a lot of North Americans freaking out about it because they've done so much. KL State Department, level 3. So why are you reading the State Department, right? First of all, so if you're reading the State Department of a narco state, the United States, who exports cartel crime to other countries, is that a good source for things? It is not, right? We assume you mean the U.S. State Department because that is... you don't look to the State Department for honest information. That's just basic traveler information. It's completely not a thing. There is no problem here. The problem is the place that has State Departments putting out fake information to cover up how bad it is at home. There is nothing whatsoever to be scared of in a country safer than the United States, right? So the question is always, without any possibility of exception, why would you ever be worried about going from somewhere more dangerous to less dangerous, regardless of the artificial made-up level system associated with it? Because no matter what level the United States State Department assigns to Nicaragua, the U.S. is at least that level or worse on its own, right? That is a guarantee, right? Because we're safer than the U.S. We're safer than the U.S. as a general thing, but when it comes to drug crimes, the U.S. is the country that creates and exports the cartels. That entire genre of problems is something that comes from the U.S. That's an entire category of things that we don't have here, right? Because we're not a U.S. Colony, we're not a U.S. puppet state, we're not part of the U.S. Drug traffic system. We're not part of the supply chain for the U.S., which is why the U.S. is pissed, right? Because we make it expensive and hard for them to get the drugs from South America up to the United States. And we cause a big problem. And we just busted enough cocaine coming out of Costa Rica, which is a narco state that the U.S. has now occupied militarily, to account for 1.25% of the GDP. Everyone feels that, right? Like, that's a noticeable impact to the U.S. drug supply chain. It's certainly not going to slow things down, but the U.S. is extra pissed that their drugs didn't get to them this past week. So you're likely going to see more panic and more fabrication of stuff. But as an American, assuming you are, it is basic common knowledge. As an American, this is basic, like, how to understand your own government. The United States government, under Obama, created a law that allows the government to propagandize its own citizens. And while that may be something you support or don't support, doesn't matter. What it means is the information coming out of the State Department is not for your benefit and is never to be repeated because it is not a source of truth. It's not an attempt to be true. Not blaming the State Department, it's their job. Right? I just had to deal with the State Department a few times for things like my passport. They did a fantastic job. Our embassy here in Nicaragua, which is a department within the State Department, really impressive. I'm very happy with the job that they did. But when you're looking at things like their travel warnings, it's important to understand that all travelers, this is considered essential basic knowledge for travelers, is that national State Department warnings are BS. They're there to manipulate you. And it's also known as a problem because you cannot repeat it. When you have a source you know isn't true or isn't meant to be true, it's not that you know it's false, you know it doesn't have a reason to be true. Like if you read The Onion, it is possible for The Onion to accidentally or even intentionally repeat real news. Right? If it's funny enough, they may make something up and accidentally say something true. A broken clock is right twice a day. So it's not that we're saying that they've gone through a distinct effort to ensure that the information is false, but their job is not to give you real information, which means you have an ethic responsibility to never read it and repeat it unless it's in the context of, can you believe what they wrote? Right? Which isn't a very interesting conversation, because when you have a thing that's not supposed to be true, no one finds it interesting what not true thing they decide to say. But we all as adults have a responsibility to never use those as sources, right? And I had someone do this recently where he didn't like the facts about Nicaragua, even living here. And so instead of using observation or instead of whatever, he went and started quoting another country's State Department. And also, importantly, a State Department that has no access to special information about the country. Even if they were trying to give real information, how would they do so? Because they don't have people spread out throughout the country collecting that information. They're not on the ground doing so. So if they're issuing warnings, it's based on hearsay at best. They are not using hearsay. I'm just saying that that would be the best case scenario, which is enough to never bother looking at it. So if you care about safety, you will not have looked at the United States or really any country that I know of travel warning sites. And if you did, you would find that a lot of countries list the United States as particularly dangerous to travel to. So if safety was your concern, you would be here already. You would be not leaving Nicaragua. You'd come down and stay. We are the safest country within the region. There is some plausibility to choosing El Salvador as safer depending on how much you weigh violent crime versus arbitrary detainment. Because we have some amount of violent crime, less than other countries, but not less than El Salvador, but essentially no arbitrary detainment. El Salvador has arbitrary detainment at an incredibly high level, but not as high as the United States, but incredibly low violent crime, mostly because of arbitrary detainment. It does have its advantages. So you can argue for the two of them, but you can't argue for anyone else. And so that's a really important context, right? One, if safety was your concern, you would never stay in the United States. And if you were looking for travel advice, you would never look at the State Department, right? That is just an important, in order to keep yourself from being tricked, you never go to the con man and say, hey, try to trick me. Even if you know they're going to try to trick you, there is a chance that they're going to succeed, right? If I go to a con man, if I go to RadPad and say, hey, guys, I get that you have conned people, you've gotten in trouble and left the country, you've taken down all your videos to hide, but just humor me, see if you can trick me. There's a really low chance that they can trick me, but that chance isn't zero. And so when we're trying to protect ourselves, we never go to a known source once that source is determined to be trying to trick us. We never use it as an attempted source of truth, because that is not how truth works. Some people will try to argue, but if I can't guarantee other things are true, well, why not use the State Department? Well, that's insane, right? That is absolutely failed logic. If you have someone making those kinds of pleas, really, they need to be institutionalized, and there's no point in trying to discuss it with them, because that is so extremely nonsensical to a point where it's amazing that their brain is able to keep their lungs going in the proper order, and at some point their heart's going to explode because their brain simply can't handle those things, apparently. But obviously, having a source that you currently believe could be true is very different than one you know is attempting to trick you, right? It doesn't mean that you trust one and not the other. It means one, you say, this is worth evaluating, and the other you say, I must avoid it because it only serves to mislead me. Even says, I avoid going to movie theaters or any crowded places in the USA anymore. Too many heavily armed, emotionally unstable people. Yeah, I'm way safer in Nicaragua than in the US. The difference in feel of safety is extreme. That is true. Canadians report the same thing, that they come down here and feel much safer. Many of them report that Canada is much more dangerous than Nicaragua. Some say that that is ridiculous. I don't have firsthand information to say, but I can tell you that a really surprising number of Canadians come here and tell me how scared they are in Canada, and they come here to get away from it. So take that for what you will. I cannot inject an opinion on it other than it's an incredibly surprising thing for someone to claim about Canada, but at this point, reasonable. Since COVID, Canada had a epic shot up in violence. Canada's known for, so the U.S. is known for kind of public violence. Canada's really known for domestic violence. That's really where their violence has a tendency to happen. And so it has a very high tendency towards being underreported compared to public violence. Obviously, if you pull out a gun and shoot people in a crowd, everyone knows about it, right? You're not going to hide that. You might get away with it, right? You might personally get away with it, but the fact that it happened won't be ignored. You go into a grocery store with a pistol and just start shooting, somebody is going to find out that happened. But domestic violence very often never gets reported, and even if it gets reported to the authorities, often gets buried with the authorities. And so, if the U.S. wanted to skew its violence numbers, it would have a very hard time doing so on its largest scale. But Canada has much more ability to do that. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying that their ability to do that is much higher, and the ability of the people committing those crimes to hide that the crime itself happened, not just that they did it, is also much higher. So we see those things. But yeah, most importantly, Nicaragua, safer than the U.S. Does that mean that the U.S. is dangerous? Of course it does not. In no way does that imply that. Not even close. The U.S. is relatively safe country, quite safe country is probably a better way to put it. It is not in any way a country where you worry about violence, and Nicaragua is noticeably safer and dramatically safer when you take the expat subgroup into consideration, right? Because there is, what is the overall danger of violent crime in a country? Right. So first of all, countries are way too high of a level to talk about crime, right? Because if you say the United States is incredibly safe, and then you drop someone in East LA or in East St. Louis, really anything in the East or South Chicago, really anything East or South, you're looking at they would be completely confused. What do you mean it's safe? This is not safe. So obviously, countries are huge generalizations on safety. But assuming that that these big general numbers are useful, we're still stuck with, to whom does this crime happen? And this is one of the things that's interesting about Mexico. So in the United States, crime is amazingly even. Not saying that it's the most even, but it's way more even than a normal country. So that means that whether you're a tourist or you're a professional or you're a living in a poor inner city neighborhood, the degree that there is difference between safety and not safety in different neighborhoods is surprisingly low. It obviously exists, right? Obviously, the dangerous parts, like I said, East St. Louis is so much more dangerous than Friendswood, Texas, right? Not even close. But if you were to take that same disparity in a lot of other countries, you would find it's actually quite a bit bigger, right? The safest part of Italy versus Naples, for example, probably more wildly different. Here in Nicaragua, crime has a tendency to exist, violent crime. There's so little of a strong criminal element that they don't really represent that much of the crime. It's so much more just generally in the population, but it's very much skewed towards the Nicaraguan population. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but the amount that we hear about it or experience it as expats approaches zero. As an expat, my risk here is so much lower than the risk to a Nicaraguan. If you go to the United States, well, the risk to an expat would probably be higher than to the average American. So, but not very much higher, but noticeably that as an expat in the United States, you would feel more nervous than the average American rather than less, and your danger versus Nicaragua would probably be double. If we look at a place like Mexico or Guatemala, which have pretty high violence rates, you may think, wow, I don't want to go there, it's dangerous. Well, the country is on a statistical scale, but that's very misleading. Mexico and Guatemala famously both have huge rates of violence within or intra-gang. So their gangs are fighting each other. And the U.S. has this happen too, but not to such a dramatic degree. These gangs fight each other, or even within themselves, and have a great number of deaths when that violence spills over outside of the gang itself. It generally spills over to local law enforcement or to military. When it spills over from that, it generally spills over into communities that directly touch gang zones and are aware that they're in a danger zone. As a tourist, unless you don't take the obvious wise step of skipping Cancun, you can go to Mexico, to go nearly anywhere, and you never end up near a gang or interacting with one in any way. So you actually can be very, very, very safe. While in Mexico, even in quite scary feeling places, because the violence is not happening within that set of people. Your behavior and existence as an expat will, unless you seek out some gang opportunity, you try to hang with a cartel for fun, unless you do that, you are probably naturally isolated from whatever gang activity there is. So we may find that in a practical sense, Mexico may be just as safe or safer than the United States. It's probably not actually safer, but it's probably very, very safe. If you come to Nicaragua, like we said, you're already safe statistically, but as an expat, you're safer still. Where this gets surprisingly bad is you go to Costa Rica, and it's the opposite. Yes, in general, it's a dangerous country at 3 times the violent crime of Nicaragua or the United States, but it also has a really, really strong skew towards the crime being towards expats. And so, mark all of the stuff you're hearing. Your source is a criminal source. You are being played by someone. There is nothing that you are hearing remotely true. We have never heard about someone being roofied in a bar here, ever. Not even a rumor, ever. I'm not saying it's never happened. Of course it's happened. Roofies happen anywhere you have an expat. But is this something happening here? No. Is there cartel crime here? No. Is there a rise in crime here? No. Is there something going on with the events going on in Mexico? No. Is there activity from the United States patrolling our waters? No. There is nothing happening. Literally, nothing has happened. There is no activity change in this incredibly safe country. Could it happen in the future? Of course it could. But no matter what, and these are not even rumors that we're hearing as rumors. None of these are being heard, right? These are completely someone is playing you, right? You've got 3 things. Each of them is enough to go back to someone and express to them that they are not your friend and you will never speak to them again. No person who is giving you these rumors as trying to trick you is a person you want to have in your life. And this is something I'm very big on, right? And you really expose this when coming to a country like Nicaragua. There are so many people in our lives, not everyone's life, but a lot of people's lives. A lot of people talk to me about this and like, how do you handle this? And I want to do more videos about this. I've done some, but I really want to do some more and dig into this. But, we're taught, and kind of for good reason, in school or in church or whatever, that people will lie to us, people will try to manipulate us, people will do, and people will act evilly. Is that a thing? Act with malice. people will vote to harm people. They'll try to take advantage of people. And and they really do. Why can't we all get along? Forgive and forget. Turn the other cheek. Right? There's all these things, and we say like, oh, politics should, you should never, think less of someone because of their politics, as if politics gives you a free pass, right? That's like saying, I know they're a serial killer, but you can't think less of them for murdering people, because that's their serial killer nature. No, dude, if they're a serial killer, I get to think very little of them. I'm completely within my right to do so. It's really my responsibility as a member of society to think poorly of people who go around murdering people, unless they really murder people with an agenda, like they're vigilantes and they're actually harming bad people, like Luigi. And you can argue that, well, he broke the law, but I would like to see you try to argue why doing the ethical thing is ever wrong, and why the law would ever come into that equation. Like, that's a serious question. Why would anyone ever bring up the law when the question is doing good, right? Robin Hood broke the law. Was that a bad thing to do? That's a hard one to argue, right? And you can say, but he stole, right? He stole from oppressors who were starving people. And he stole from oppressors who were funding a person who had stolen the crown, right? It's a pretty big deal. Now, I'm sure there's two sides to that, and it happened a long time ago, so we don't really know a lot about it. But we know the general gist of the story, and we know that in every interpretation, Robin Hood was the good guy, and the law was the bad guy. Specifically, the sheriff himself was the criminal that needed to hang, right? That's the story of Robin Hood, right? So I got derailed. So we're taught this, but this is a highly toxic thing. The only person who would want you to overlook the evil, the misdeeds done by people around you are people who are either doing or planning on doing those things, and need you to overlook them later, right? We really shouldn't punish people who break into your house and rob you. That just seems judgmental. Well, you can be pretty sure that guy's hoping to break into your house and steal your stuff, right? And not only is he a thief, he's also an emotional manipulator, which is maybe worse, right? We just don't have a law that is able to catch people who are emotional manipulators. But when you come to a country like Nicaragua, what is really quickly found is people are so passionate about trying to harm Nicaragua or harm you, often out of jealousy, often out of a sense of entitlement, right? A feeling that you contribute to the welfare state, and that their welfare will not be being serviced adequately if you're not there. So quite often the reaction, right? Like for Mark may be a contributor to the economy of his village or to the country or whatever, and people are reacting negatively to him. I'm not saying that we have an indication of this in this case, but this is one of those types of things, is that people feel that they live off of and are owed the labor of other people. And when those people consider visiting or moving somewhere, people will get angry, like really angry, because they perceive you taking away their golden goose. They had a way to take your money away from you, and they feel that you owe it to them. And so they will react very negatively. Or maybe they just don't like you as a person deeply, but they want to pretend to be your friend or whatever, and they will just seek to do harm to you. Or maybe they're just racist or, just terrible people, and they just want to do harm to other people, and they try to discredit by lying about stuff, right? But so when you introduce something like Nicaragua, it has a tendency to trigger a bunch of people who otherwise you don't run into so much. Mark, I assume you're asking, are your friends that you're talking to extorting tourists? They're trying to extort you. Yes, that is what's going on. You are being extorted by someone in America. I don't know what their end goal is, but yes, the people that you are talking to are definitely trying to extort you so that you don't come and protect yourself in Nicaragua. And so you have this exposure where many of the people in your lives who may be very mildly hiding some disgusting traits or desire to hurt you. When you mention Nicaragua, it may sorry, one of our viewers just made it back to his country. You're very likely going to trigger emotions that people have not exhibited before. Or maybe they have, but it's very mild, and now they're really angry, right? Oh, I'm thinking about moving from New York to Pennsylvania. I don't like that. I'm thinking about moving from New York to Nicaragua. Oh my gosh, they lose their minds. They're not sure how to react. They're so angry that you get to do that and they don't. I don't know why they don't, right? They need to go see therapy, but that's how people react. That's one side. And of course, there are people who are just paid to say these things. That's a little bit different. That's not how most things are. Those aren't the people you know, right? That's like random people online. But when it's people you know trying to trick you, you can be pretty confident that it's not not someone being paid by the government to propagandize you, right? And mostly that's not people being paid by the like really there are bots, whether automated bots or AI bots now, which are very expensive comparatively, but way cheaper compared to people. Those are mostly the things that are posting. Right, but when it comes to your friends, you can be with relative assurance that that is not the case. So generally, they're reacting either exposing that they will harm you and lie and be dishonest and disgusting and racist out of a deep-seated racism or something similar. Or you expose that they simply hate you. Whether they're just jealous of you and they want to, keep you from getting the advantages of a safer life, of a cheaper life, of a happy life. They just don't want to see you succeed. And to be fair, in many of these cases, it is a normal human interaction or reaction to see something good happening to someone else that you perceive can't happen to you and to respond angrily. Why does this good thing happen to them? I need to derail this, or at least I need to make them unhappy about it. And I absolutely know this exists, and I try very hard not to have this happen, but I had a client who did not listen to me, and this is just yesterday. And his mistake, right, I'm the one who had to report it to him, and cost him definitely tens of thousands of dollars, and possibly millions. And obviously, I would never have intentionally caused that to happen. I'm the one who worked to stop it from happening. But he chose not to listen to me and listen to people who were not really advisors for this, and he should have known really trivially not to listen to them. But he did. And it wasn't stuff like, I think red is better for this than blue. It was, have you considered licensing and, costs and deep, important things. And they're just like, you really shouldn't consider those things. You should just do what sounds good to you, and money should be no object. And so he actually said money's no object, and thought that was hundreds of dollars that he was going to spend, and it turned out to be quite possibly millions or tens of millions. At the high side is within the realm of reason, and certainly his budget was off. He was thinking $200 to maybe $500 per month was what his cost was going to be, and he came up with hard requirements much closer to $50,000 because of that quick mistake. Emotionally, it was satisfying to be able to be like, okay, so this is going to be $50,000, and just watch him lose his mind when he finds out that the people had misled him, and they didn't do it to harm him. He didn't want to listen because he didn't like to. He likes to talk over people, gets very, oh no, I know what I'm doing. Please don't don't explain these things to me because I can't believe you think I don't know how this works. Okay. But he didn't know how it worked. He didn't know the terms. He didn't pay attention. And ended up with this massive bill that he created. Nothing, not from us. I just reported what he was ordering, that he decided he needed, and but is it emotionally satisfying to feel? Yeah, yeah, it is. So when you're having something good happen to you, and you know your friends are reacting with a, you know, oh, can we harm you? It's, I think, acceptable for people to have this emotional reaction of, oh, I don't feel great that something great is happening to you, and I don't think it can happen to me. But there's a big difference between there's some amount of emotional reaction and I see Just JG just posted, made it to Toronto, long day. We're also talking separately. I was right in the middle of things. So JG, glad that you made it finally back to Canada. I'll talk about his situation in a second. But there's a difference between someone being like, oh, I'm struggling to feel happy for you, versus my reaction is to fabricate ways to harm you, right? That means that they're only an inch away from finding a blunt object and trying to, you know, break your leg to keep you from moving, right? So we have found in talking to person after person that moves to Nicaragua or similar, right, have a tendency, and it doesn't have to be a place that is so politically divisive to Americans. It's truly mind-boggling that Nicaragua, with essentially no foreign policy, could be divisive to anyone, right? Because people get angry that the government cares about the people. That's literally what people get angry about. They don't militarize, they don't interfere in other countries, and they try to do good things for their people. And that angers a lot of people, right? Which is a great question. Why do we get angry? Because other people's governments care about them. And I get it. If you live in a country where your government doesn't care about you, you feel like the redheaded stepchild. Well, why am I so mistreated? Why don't I deserve nice things? Well, you do. You just didn't get them, right? It's not that you didn't deserve them. This isn't personal, right? You're one of millions of people stuck in some country that you feel doesn't care about you, and it makes you upset that you found out that there are other people that they care about, just like the orphan who doesn't get adopted is really pissed about the people who grew up with their birth parents and never had to worry about those things. Life is unfair. That doesn't mean that that orphan doesn't get shafted. They do. It also doesn't mean it's personal. Their parents who died in a car crash didn't die intentionally, right? Sometimes things just suck, and it's unfortunate, but that doesn't mean you should go out and beat up kids just because they have parents. That's the wrong reaction. So we end up with exposing a lot of people simply by pushing them a bit too far, that the combination of having good things happen to you, going on an adventure that maybe they're scared to go on. That's a big one. A lot of the thing, it's fear that people struggle with. That's very real. And so, you know, good people internalize these things and, you know, talk about it with friends and family or therapy, or just suck it up and act like a good person because they know how to be good, even though they may not be feeling the best, because they feel that somehow they owe this thing, but won't do it. Right? It's easy to overlook. Oh, my friend took the effort of going to make this happen, and that's not happening to me, right? Maybe I should go do those things, right? Well, no, I'm not going to actually do something to make my life better. I'm just going to be angry at them for doing something better with their lives. Okay, so in that process, we expose these people in our lives, and we are taught and pressured and bullied, peer pressure, to accept them, that bad people are a part of society and you need bad people in your friends group and you need them to influence you. No, you don't. Absolutely not. That is bullshit. You have one thing you need to do with those people. Cut them out of your lives. And I know some of you are going to be like, but it's my cousin, it's my aunt, it's my neighbor. Great. They were too close to you and poisoning you, right? Maybe not with arsenic, but they are trying to poison your mind. They are trying to derail your life. They are using their resources, whether it's emotional manipulation or whatever. They're trying to harm you. Why would our reaction ever be, I know this person is trying to harm me and they hate me, but I should keep them around because I feel obligated to do so? No. That obligation comes from abuse, right? That's an abuse reaction. And I know that's the trendy thing to say. But many, many, many people are brought up with some abusive relationship around them, whether it's a family member, and we're not talking about physical abuse, right? We're talking about mental abuse in this case. Somebody abuses you at home. If you've been to a church, almost guaranteed that happened. Most schools end up with some amount of mental abuse, whether it's teachers or principals or just other students, right? Big social circumstances are going to produce mentally abusive situations. Almost all Americans, and lots of people around the world, nothing unique about America, are going to get this bullying, peer pressure, right? This is the stuff that the cops in the 80s warned you about, right? Is these toxic people who wish you harm, who are going to try to use bullying and peer pressure to cause you not to do what's good for you, right? No different than a drug dealer who actually, mentally abuses you to try to get you on drugs, right? Not like your friendly drug dealer who's like, hey, I got a deal on Coke today. And you're like, I don't know. I don't really feel like I need it. Hey, man, no, cool. If you want it, it's here. And not, just letting you know it's on sale. All right, cool, man. Right? There's a big difference. And that it even crosses your mind that these are people you should keep in your lives. Why? That is so illogical, right? And I get it. We are so pressured not to sever family and friend ties, especially family ties, over bad behavior, over being a bad person, right? Oh, Uncle so-and-so, the groper, the drunk groper who comes to every Thanksgiving, right? I'm really lucky I grew up in a family without these people. But lots of family have that inappropriate person. Well, we can't get rid of them because, some other toxic person in the family doesn't care about the rest of the family and tries to keep them in. We're all just supposed to act like we don't know, or just act like it's not happening, or, pretend, look the other way, don't say anything, right? We're pressured. We are abused. Right, and we're taught not to protect others, right? For whatever reason, it looks bad to point out, and to no one wants to admit that they've let it slide for so long, or that bad things happen in their family or their circle or whatever. But our reaction should be, "Wow, this person's bad for me. Bye." That's about it. That's like the whole thing. Bye-bye. And it is one of the most freeing things when you can take toxic people in your life, remove them, right? It's like a miracle cure. You don't have to do anything, right? You have a person who is bringing you down. Don't let them. Snip them right out of your life. Never speak to them again. And in a case like Mark's, right? Clearly somebody is orchestrating an abusive relationship with him, is coming up, had locked and loaded fake things. Someone took effort to either collect or fabricate false information for him. Information that obviously, with any research, would have exposed that Mark's friend or whoever was trying to manipulate him. And so that person didn't just try to cause harm to Mark in this scenario, right? They also essentially admitted that they were willing to be easily exposed and lose their relationship with Mark. That someone said these things to you, that someone acts this way towards you, fabricates things to harm you, to keep good things from happening to you. Imagine winning the lotto. Being like, I got the winning lottery ticket. I'm going to pay off all my dets. I'm going to buy a new house. going to invest in an ice cream stand, and your friend or your uncle who doesn't like you, maybe you thought liked you but doesn't, is like, oh, no, if you cash in that lottery ticket, money's going to make you unhappy. No, you if you were smart, you wouldn't do it. No, definitely, I wouldn't do it. And he talks you out of cashing in that lottery ticket, and then you go bankrupt because, you had a lot of debt and you're throwing money away and you're listening to people who are toxic. Right? That would seem insane. Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, right? Mark is talking about coming to Nicaragua. This is like hitting the lotto of places you're able to go and know about, right? It's not quite as unlikely as the lotto because you could ask people and put in some research and find it, whereas the lotto, you just have to hit the numbers. But most people don't put in effort and research, so it actually ends up more similar than you think. But he's got the lottery ticket. He's got the way to safety and lower cost and a new life and free healthcare and quality healthcare, right? And there's someone or some group of people in his life who are like, don't cash in your lottery ticket. No, I wouldn't do it if I won. Yeah, right. Of course they would. They didn't win, and they want bad things to happen to you, or they don't want good things to happen to you. You want those people out of your life so fast. So fast. And that's a great thing about coming to Nicaragua, is that those people aren't going to come visit you. They're going to stop talking to you, or they're just going to spew lies at you, right? Block them. Stop listening. Solved, right? It's so easy. And the people that you do want to keep talking to, they're going to follow you. Maybe they're not going to, not all of them can travel. Not all of them want to travel but they're going to keep in contact. And a lot of them are actually going to come, maybe just to visit. But it really acts as an opportunity to expose toxic parts of your life. And we all have a opportunity, but an obligation to ourselves, not to society, but to ourselves, to use this incredibly unique and outrageously powerful mechanism in our lives to seize what really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to absolutely, positively identify and snip, snip, snip out of our lives those people who we now know have no interest in us being successful. They're only there when they can leech off of us, maybe emotionally, maybe financially, maybe in other ways. I don't know. Now, that's not to say that you should react to any person being like, ooh, Nicaragua, I heard that was dangerous. Yeah, I'm sure you did, right? But it's not. But it also gives us an opportunity to educate them. But you need to think about who told you it was dangerous, right? Someone is feeding you information. Now, if someone says, I looked at a newspaper, it said Nicaragua was dangerous. Is it? And everyone kept saying, I heard someone question, it might be dangerous. And we just keep repeating this. It shouldn't change. It should never become, I heard that it's dangerous. At that point, that person is now a liar, right? The first people are just, maybe it is, I don't know. I would like to know. That's honest. Now, if they really wanted to know, they could look it up really easily. Which is important for understanding that anyone who tells you it's dangerous, you know. Either actively avoided simple fact-checking, definitely avoided common sense, right? Would we hear about it being dangerous if it was really dangerous, but not shown that it's dangerous? Oh, not likely. Oh, gosh, yeah, the behavior of the manner in which we're told it's dangerous really suggests it's not. Practically guarantees it, but doesn't guarantee it. I need to research that. But it definitely tells you enough to know that you could not repeat it. But seize this opportunity, right? Use this, and don't be afraid to cut people out of your lives, I guess. Instead, be excited. There's always toxic people in your life. Absolutely. It just is. And most people go through life with so little change that it's really, really, really rare that you're going to identify huge percentages of those people that are bad for you in a single go. Right? You may identify one here and there over time, but it's very hard until they actually just do something. But this is probably your once in a lifetime opportunity to have really big cutting outs. And that allows you, right? You know, some of you are going to be like, but more friends, more family, isn't that what we want? I'm not saying turn them down when they're good. Spend more time with good people. You will be so much happier and safer, right? If we're talking about safety, right, isn't probably the most dangerous situation where you're being manipulated and misled and abused? Not only is that on its own but it sets you up for other manipulation, for other abuse, for other cons. And that's just dangerous as a lifestyle. And so this is a spot to protect yourselves in every aspect of life. It's a way to make your life better, not just by coming to Nicaragua. Yeah, that's great too, but to be able to actually make the way that your life functions better. It's amazing, right? So I've got a couple things I need to write. So we're going to talk real quick on RJ's flight information, because this is something worth talking about. So he flew, as you guys know, Nicaragua does not require onward tickets. We have no such thing. No mechanism like that exists in this country. That's Costa Rica. But we have the problem that Costa Rica is really well known, and so lots of people confuse it with Nicaragua legitimately, or semi-legitimately. With that, or because of that, it makes it very easy for someone to spread misinformation, right? Just like what we're talking about. If Costa Rica has high crime, well, it's easy enough to make that claim about Nicaragua, and a lot of people will just be like, "Wow, it's nearby, so it must." Right? That's a sovereign country, right? No matter how many moose Canada has, it doesn't mean you're going to see a bunch in Florida. But they're neighboring countries. Clearly, doesn't work that way, right? Nor do you get a whole bunch of alligators in the swamps of North Canada. It just sounds silly when you say it, but when you do it with Costa Rica and Nicaragua, suddenly people are like, "Isn't it all one place?" No, it's not. But we have to warn people, just because the law has no such concept. If you're flying into anywhere, there's a really high chance that they're going to require an onward ticket, just because the airlines can. Now, how can airlines do this if they didn't make it their own requirement in their rules? Well, there's basically no consumer protections on airlines, and when there is, they're extremely difficult to action. So, for example, I had this happen to one of my viewers. Was coming from Spain to Costa Rica. Nicaragua was not involved. Costa Rica requires an onward ticket. Yes, that's fine. They had an onward ticket. The airlines decided in Spain that they didn't like that onward ticket, and they had to have a different one, and tried to force them to get one at the last second. It was a completely fake requirement, but and there are some pretty decent protections in the EU in general. They would be in big trouble for not letting them on the plane. But as non-EU citizens, being able to live in Europe and wage a lawsuit against the airlines, very difficult. And the airlines have very deep pockets and do this every day. So it's a very difficult fight. But if you're flying through the United States, there are no consumer protections whatsoever. The airlines can do absolutely anything they want. You really, short of being able to capture something on film and make us think about it and get a news agency to pick it up, you are powerless. You are the definition of impotent flying on American airlines passing through the United States. If they're in other countries, you get some protections. But if you're in the United States, you lose those protections. And so it is a very common thing for airlines, and I don't know of any that don't do this. I have not personally had any airlines pull this with me, but loads of my viewers have reported it from, as far as I know, every single airline that originates from the United States. That may not be true, but to the best of my knowledge, it is, including my beloved Spirit. I have been reported that it has happened. I can report that they have not done it to me, and I fly them a lot, and it doesn't matter because they're going to be gone tomorrow, it seems. But they are the one I've only ever heard one person mention it, and they certainly, in firsthand testing many, many times, have never done it to me ever. And I've been flying them for 11 years, specifically to Nicaragua. But other airlines, like Avianca coming to Nicaragua, we hear reports of nearly every time, but definitely not every time, just nearly. I flew them several times over the last few years and have never once again been asked for it. No airlines has asked me, so that makes it, but this is important. There is no airlines that I can find that does it consistently. I have flown Aeromexico, I have flown United, I have flown American, I have flown Spirit, Avianca, TACA, and probably others that I'm not thinking of, Copa, and never have they required it. So it is obviously not a requirement. Nicaragua is very clear that they have no such requirement, and most of the airlines exhibit that they know it is not a requirement. But nearly all use it from time to time when they want to not put someone on a plane without having a reason. And the problem is, while you can try to fix it or whatever, it's there's literally nothing you can do. You are 100% at their mercy. They can extort you in any way that they want. And they have the power to just claim anything you say is belligerence and arrest you. Right? That may get them in a little bit of trouble if there really isn't any belligerence, but they can certainly do it and ruin your week. And in many cases, if you're not a citizen of the United States, that's a really scary thing, because they'll just call ICE and have you detained. Right? Arbitrary detainment is the name of the game in the United States these days. So those are real fears, real fears. And so JG had the issue that he was in Miami and got extorted for a ticket today, and they didn't have a way of getting him an onward ticket, because apparently the networking, the internet access at the airport in the U.S., which, as we know, is the fourth world, was not able to work websites because their internet was too weak, and so was most of the way to Managua, and had to turn around today, and is now at least in Canada but not home, but is on the show live. So hey, how's it going? Sorry, it's been such a long day. I was late starting the show. I was picking him up at the airport, and then ended up stopping and having lunch and seeing a few people on the way back. So Silver said, pardon my ignorance, what is an onward ticket? So I want to mention two things. One, an onward ticket, as defined by every country I know, is any acceptable public transportation ticket, which could be an airlines, a bus ticket, a ferry, in most cases a private shuttle or a private driver or a rental car. Like, a lot of things generally count. They're not trying to be, in any case that I know of, a stickler about it, but it is showing that you have already paid for your means out of the country during the period of your visa, right? Can't be 5 years in the future. It's for now, right? They know, and the reason is pretty clear. And Costa Rica does this, right? So why does Costa Rica do this? They want to know when you come into their country that you can leave their country. They don't want to worry about you becoming destitute more than maybe a month, right? Oh, they're going to be destitute for a week or two. Okay, they'll take the risk. But they don't want you becoming a permanent burden on society by having no financial means to leave the country when you're done with your trip. So they want to make sure that you already have that access. And I know friends moving to Australia, they have to do that every time that they visit their own apartment, right? So this is a very common requirement places, but we have problems with the airlines because Nicaragua does not have this requirement. So people are like, is there such a requirement? No, there's no such thing. And then an airline says you have to have one. Well, you don't have the ability to argue. They're lying, but there's nothing you can do about it. So the problem is then the countries that do have this rule, it's an onward ticket, meaning any ticket. But some airlines will demand that it be a flight out. It's a way for them to support the airline industry. And if you then produce one, they may decide that it has to be a flight with them. And they're determining all the factors, right? So they're already lying about the onward ticket in its entirety, so that they will continue to lie about other things. They might say, well, yours is on a different airline, so it doesn't count. Oh, now you have one with us. It's too far out. It doesn't count. They can just make up any factor they want if they don't want to put you on a plane. And there's nothing you can do about it, not realistically, in the United States. So it's something to be aware of. What are your protections? Avoid flying through the United States, but it still happens other places. But 95% of complaints we hear are in the U.S. Never heard of it happening in Latin America. Never have I heard about it happening in Europe, except in flying from Europe to Latin America. I've never heard about it happening in any of those cases, except where an American ally was involved, Costa Rica. In that case, those are the common factors. But it's becoming so common as a scam. And as airlines learn that they can do it with impunity, why would they ever stop doing it? They're just going to do it more because it's become a really effective tactic, and the whole world knows that they do it, and no one can stop them. So now they're in a, what are you going to do about it? Like, quite literally not, oh, our customers don't care. They're into a, our customers are impotent and ha ha, right? And Spirit going out of business is a perfect example of, we can't turn to another airlines. If they decide to blacklist you because you didn't have an onward ticket, you're done. That's it. Right, so they actually have the power to destroy your lives in a lot of cases. So avoid flying through the U.S. if you can, and if you are flying through the U.S., buy an onward flight ticket. There are services that do this, and just assume you're paying a 15% extra, $15 extra fee on top of your flight for that protection. And I don't know of anyone who's had that one not work on them yet, but always a risk. Everything's a risk. There is no perfect protection. But so be aware that just because you know that Nicaragua doesn't have onward tickets doesn't protect you, and just because you have an onward ticket doesn't protect you. There's always risk. Ethan says, it is a ticket to show your departure, like when you're leaving the country. He says, thank you. You can use plane or bus. I'm not sure on taxis. Can you use taxis, Scott? I don't know. Well, so in Nicaragua, there doesn't exist such a thing. So it's arbitrary. In Costa Rica, I believe prepaying a taxi will work, but definitely ask Costa Rica. But again, just because Costa Rica accepts it doesn't mean the airlines will. The airline checks are unrelated to the national ones. Now, if you're flying from the U.S. to Costa Rica, generally they know that people are aware of the Costa Rica rules, so it's slightly different. They will definitely enforce it, but they're less likely to make something up. Now, the risk that they do run is if enough people complain, right? So this is Avianca in this case. In theory, enough of us could go to the regulators in Nicaragua and say, you have an airline with a license to operate in your country that is lying about the government and attempting to make the government look bad. And it's harming tourism. And that's a risky gamble to take, because those complaints don't go through the airlines and they won't know who made them. And you never know when someone who is aware of these things has access to people in power who work for the Department of Tourism, who have a direct interest in ensuring that lies about tourism in their country are not done without punishment. And so airlines like Avianca do take a risk that if Nicaragua felt that it was impacting them too much, because the crime is actually happening in the United States, right? But because Avianca has no absolute right to operate in Nicaragua, Nicaragua can yank their operating permit and simply not allow them to fly into Managua. They can also not allow them to fly over their airspace, which is really problematic for someone flying through Central America. We represent a lot of necessary airspace, right? Costa Rica depends on us to allow flights over. So, but that's extreme, right? And much more realistically, especially with things like Spirit being taken away, the airlines that do come here kind of have the country over a barrel, because unless Nicaragua is going to fund their own airlines that are going to fly cheaply to a whole bunch of places in the region, we're stuck with airlines that decide to come here, and we're always cajoling them, trying to get more, not in a position to be like, oh, you don't want to play by the rules, you can go. They're kind of in a position of setting the rules, right? Beggars can't be choosers. So it's very unfortunate right now. But could that change? Absolutely. And could Nicaragua decide to re-flag a flag carrier? Yep, they certainly could. I don't expect it. But they could, and that'd be awesome. If I can get out in front of anyone and promote that idea, you know I will be. Because I think it would be good, right? We used to have a flag carrier. Getting one back would be excellent. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to go to a lot of places, but can go to a lot of cool places that other things don't go to. And, I don't really need that as a person who lives here. I would be absolutely thrilled. There are only 2 flights that I'm crazy passionate about. One has been announced. That's Iberia is going to be flying Madrid to Managua. Sure, I would like it if we also had a direct flight to Paris, a direct flight to Rome, a direct flight to Lisbon, a direct flight to Algiers. Like, there's a number of flights that I would love to see, but they're pipe dreams and completely unnecessary. One flight going into Madrid is adequate to access all of Europe, either with an onward flight, a ferry to Algiers, which is a place I want to go to regularly, or the trains. So Madrid solves all of my old world accessibility problems. And then the other flight that has not been even suggested publicly is the LATAM connector to Lima. If we get that, I have no need for a flight carrier. I have no need for Managua to become a hub. I don't care if any airline flying northbound into North America even exists anymore at that point. Yeah, from a tourism perspective, I think we should keep them. But for me personally, I only care about those 2 flights. I would probably never fly anything else again, except maybe the blockade buster to Havana on Conviasa, because it's the connector to Turkish for going into Asia and that part of the world. And I just love flying Turkish, so I'm willing to do that. That's kind of it. Right? But so that's why you're kind of going to be taken advantage of there. So always be at least mentally prepared for that, if not physically prepared for that to possibly happen. Does the Taxisa just write you a ticket like the buses? So more or less, yes. So remember, we're only talking about Costa Rica. It's the only place where this is real in the region. I have used Taxisas to get out of the country before. Well, that sure sounds like I must have used it as an onward ticket, right? I'm in the same boat as you. I don't remember. So having done this with taxis, I'm pretty sure it worked, right? We definitely didn't do anything weird to have onward tickets. We definitely did, on multiple occasions, use taxis to do this. So I think what you do is you use a taxi service and you prepay for the taxi to bring you back, and just schedule a date, and then they can just print you out a receipt for that, and you can show it. And if the government really doesn't trust them, we're talking like border control, they could call that taxi service and be like, are you scheduled to do this? Okay. Keep in mind, I've been through the Costa Rican border an awful lot here, and one thing that I can say pretty consistently, they're not trying to keep you from coming in. They have some requirements, but the border will be like, here's how you get an onward ticket. Here's some ideas. Here's a guy. Do these things. They're not trying to stop you from getting in. They're just trying to help you meet the minimum requirements and then come in, right? So they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you paid for a private transportation instead of a big, smelly bus with a bunch of people eating rice and beans while you drive. Oh no, we're not letting you in. Of course they're going to let you in, right? They don't want to turn away all the people with private vehicles. That is not their goal, because they would end up turning away all the people with any amount of money who didn't fly in. Anyone who's kind of local that's driving in would be a huge problem, and many flying in want to be able to just pop, be footloose and fancy free. So there are mechanisms, and I'm pretty sure that the just scheduling a taxi like a private car makes it a non-issue. I cannot imagine that would be a problem. But if it turns out to be one, use the $15 flight service. I remember you did a video. This is Ethan again. Did a video about a guy that did a border run, and the guy explained the whole process. You mentioned the bus transportation writes you a ticket for an onward. Yes, 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 yes. So I did that with Mike, and not too long ago, and he, I think, was using the same bus service that I tend to, which is Nika Expresso, but it may be the other one, and they were doing it on the spot. So that service exists. Now that would be at the land border. They're not going to do that at the airport because there's no bus terminal there. So there's no bus agent to go talk to. In the case of the physical border, that's Piñas Blancas here at Nicaragua, there's agents for the bus standing right there, and they'll make you a ticket right on the spot. So you can do that. Nicer to have it ahead of time if you can, but if you need one on the spot, you certainly can. So it's pretty easy. Mark says, if the police take your passport, it can be difficult to leave the country. Without a passport, things get even more complicated. Yes, that's why they take your passport, because you're in a situation where you're no longer allowed to leave the country. That's the point. So he's right, but it's important to understand that's the point of taking your passport. It means that you've committed an infraction serious enough that they need to make sure you don't go anywhere. So yeah, I mean, and that is 100% the case in every country on earth. If you commit a crime in any country, they take your passport as the first thing. Certainly, if you're in the United States and they think you're a risk, they're going to take your passport. Also, they will simply not let you leave the country with or without a passport. The difference is in Nicaragua, there just isn't as much technology for things like the police department, and so if they let you have your passport, there is a chance that the border would not catch that you were supposed to be detained and let you go, but only a chance. In the United States, there's no chance. If they pull your passport, every airport, every exit border will have facial recognition and have you blocked in a second. So again, if this is something you're concerned about, you're going to be in Nicaragua now. You won't be waiting. Right? The last place you'll be is the United States. Now, I'm not saying that this is a rational thing to be worried about, right? That's just not realistic. As like the safety, right? When we say the U.S. is less safe than Nicaragua, it's true, but rationally, it's not a reason to be concerned. It's just not unsafe enough to be a problem. So, but if your concern is the difficulty in leaving a country, the United States is the country with the most capability and most reason for concern that you won't be able to leave. So, and this is something we have been saying, short of like Israel, who currently people can't leave, right, for a lot of reasons. And we know people who've become trapped because they were in Israel, thought they would be able to come and go and cannot, and have now been trapped for quite some time. Citizens, right? So if your concern is becoming trapped within a country, one, that risk never really goes away. And if you're in the United States, that risk is here. If you're in most other countries, the risk is here. That's about it. Every country has the risk. Your own country generally has slightly more, and the United States, just in general, has slightly more because of the intense capability of its border control systems. Jan says, you reminded me of my border run last week. Going into Costa Rica, the guy asked, what city are you going to? And I said, Leon, and he had some problems processing that. Wait. You said Leon to the person you're going to into Costa Rica? That's because you're supposed to tell Costa Rica you're going to Piñas Blancas. That would be confusing, because you're not going to Leon in that direction. Has everyone done their Duolingo tonight? Just checking on that. I have not. And so to make sure we don't have any Duolingo concerns here, I've already done all my streaks and stuff. Not worried about any of that. I just need to make sure that my one main streak keeps going. Jan says, right, I was telling him my city. Yes, that's Why would you, yeah? Don't say that to the Costa Rican people. Say that to the Nicaraguan people. I'm just gonna do this reading thing real quick. So sorry to everyone who has to listen to this. I just walk around the corner and go back to Nicaragua. I realize that, but when you're going into Costa Rica, even that walking around the corner, you went to Piñas Blancas. Like, just say that and there'll not be a question. It's actually wrong because you are going to Piñas Blancas in that transaction. It's when you leave Piñas Blancas, then you're going to León. Compró pasta de dientes. Necesito un cepillo de uñas muy suave. I always say that in Costa Rica. It's funny, it's true. Me corté el pelo hasta los hombros. Ethan says, I lack on my Duolingo, but I practice talking in Spanish every day. I do both. I try very hard to do both. I've been in Spanish all day today. Creo que esas afeitadoras son para mujeres. Compré esta loción cuando fui al centro. Well, it wasn't staying. No one does anything bad but shake their head. Yeah, but you are confusing them. ¿Qué crema de afeitar recomienda? Los pañuelos no están donde los guardé. Los guardé. Vuelves a la peluquería donde te cortarán mal el pelo. Me encanta ir a tiendas de belleza. No es necesario afeitarse durante las vacaciones. Oh, we tried out a new restaurant today. There, I just finished it, so sorry for that. But confusing people is what I want to do anyway. That's normal. You're speaking really well. Well, thank you. So we tried out Casablanca today, which is, oh, and my phone is charged. My phone is fully charged on my brand new 65-watt dual charger, so that's really encouraging. That charged pretty fast. And this was a super cheap Amazon order, but oh no, not I'm saying 65 watts, 45 watts. So that's still pretty good, but it charges two things at once. So you know you're hanging out, you gotta charge your phone, and your friend's like, "Oh, I need to charge my phone." It comes with a bundle. This is right. I've got one plugged in with a cable. It's two of these and three USB cables, all in one package. Or four all in one package. So it's enough to charge four devices at once, just with what was in the package for like $20. So, yay! So we checked out Casablanca at Camino Real today, and honestly, I was pretty happy. Marcella was not so thrilled. This is one of those, like, I think the food was really good for Americans, and Nicaraguans are like, kind of things. I'm not sure. But it was a buffet lunch. People are always interested in this, right? It was a buffet lunch, and I think for the two of us, she got a drink. I just had water, but we had a full meal with starter and meal and dessert. And I think with tip and tax is $45, which is not super cheap. But this is Managua by the airport at a luxury hotel thing with an attached casino and in a kind of fancy restaurant. So really not bad, all things considered. A little bit on the high end, not what you would normally be doing all the time, but certainly a very doable place. So the buffet was good. I was really happy with the salad bar. Had very fresh veggies. Had okay salad dressing. It had a good pasta salad on it. It had roasted potatoes on it. Like the salad bar bit was on point. And then for the main course, they had a bunch of meats that, of course, I didn't look at, but including like some pretty serious meat cuts. I was impressed. They had fried coyote, which I thought was quite good, which is not really like it's more like a hefty side, but that was good. They had an excellent 4-cheese mac and cheese, baked mac and cheese. Like I was quite impressed with that. That is the best mac and cheese I've had yet in Nicaragua, hands down. I should say made by Nicaraguans. My daughter and I make baked macaroni and cheese at home, which is pretty darn good. I'm not saying that it's better than that. It might have been better than that, but I don't think so. But for a restaurant, this was really good. And then they had pescado, fish, cacciatore, which I grew up in Western New York, and my mother would make chicken cacciatore on a very regular basis, maybe once every 2 months. Probably when I was younger, like 10, it was probably like a monthly thing, and then when I was older, it was probably like a 2 or 3 month thing. But I definitely remember in my younger childhood that it was one of my mom's staples. I haven't had a good cacciatore in a really long time. Doing it on fish isn't as good as chicken that I remember, but I don't eat chicken and haven't for a quarter century. So getting it on fish was good. My mother's was thicker and sweeter. I would have preferred that on the fish. The fish kind of waters it down, but I thought it was good. If you're looking for something different, though, that was great. I was so happy to just have a 4-cheese mac and cheese, totally different than what we make at home. That was great. Pescado cacciatore, that was great. Very happy. And then there was a pretty decent selection for dessert, which included a chai mousse. Wasn't a huge fan, but kudos for them for trying it. They had like a chocolate cake thing that looked really good. I didn't want very much, so I just tried the chai mousse. But they had like chocolate cake. They had a coconut cake that looked fantastic. A few other things. I can't remember everything, but it was just a good selection all around. So I thought, all you can eat for basically $22 per person. Was with a pretty good selection of pretty high-end things. And the service was excellent. The waiters were great. The people working the buffet were great. Really, really happy with the experience overall. I don't know how often we're going to head out there. It's a weird location. It's, a buffet. You don't know what you're going to get. But they were prepared with vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan items all on the menu, plus several meats, plus that great salad. They didn't treat the salad as their vegetarian thing. And dessert all include and heavy air conditioning with an extra seating area that was not air conditioned if you wanted it. It seemed like a nice place. So I was happy with that. That was a good lunch experience today. Ethan says, I'm very ready for my trip to Nicaragua coming soon. And then he says, have you ever eaten at the restaurant on the corner across from the White Church in Leon? Their food is also good. You're thinking of, yes, we've all eaten there. There's no way we haven't eaten there. El Cesteo is what you're thinking of. They are pretty decent. They're surprisingly good considering they're a tourist trap. Like they're on the square, right? Like they don't have to have good food. They could just be crap and people would still go there because of the view and the place to sit. But the reality is their food is far from the best in town, but it's a decently broad menu. It's a nice venue. The service is actually good. I'm always happy with the waiters. And I can always find food that I'm okay with. None of it's great, but all of it's okay. The one complaint, if it wasn't so commonly loud on the square, my kids would want to go there more. But even as it is, they're willing to go there from time to time. And they're always like, that was okay. But yeah, El Cesteo. For a long time, I couldn't go there. My wife decided that she absolutely hated it and was just like, I will never go there. And so I was always stuck going on my own. Now she goes there way more than me. For the last 3 years, she goes there, 4 times as often as I do. And for the longest time, I couldn't get her to go there because one time she didn't like the service or something. I don't know. And so it's like, oh, now you go? For so long, I wanted to go there. Because it is a cool place to sit. It's... Sorry for my loud keyboard. The birds are a great experience to see. There is a ton of pigeons that gather in front of the cathedral, and kids run out and they swoop up and they go in huge clouds of birds and swing around in the square. It's pretty cool. The square is all clear now. They cleared it out. All the little shops that are there are all gone. They've got the new gazebo. They took the bouncy houses out. Honestly, I think it's good. The place was so dramatically filled with stuff. I like it from it was very active, but it was, if you go into the beautiful squares of other cities around Central America, Granada here in Nicaragua, Matagalpa here in Nicaragua, Managua, Antigua, right? Travel around. Their squares are often these showcases that are big and open and really nice, and you want to take pictures. And ours in Leon was like, let's just cram a whole bunch of vendors in and sell 100 different versions of the same elote and 100 versions of the same cheap knickknacks. And no variation, no reason to have it like that. And like, it was just very strange, and super competitive with itself. So like if you wanted to go in there, the only logical thing was to open yet another elote stand. And so as a person who kind of maybe wanted to go actually, eat there, you walk into the square and you're like, oh my gosh, street food. This is going to be it's just 8 elote carts sitting next to each other. And you walk up to them and you're like, I don't know who to walk up to. I feel badly because they're all the same. I can't tell them apart. So I have to randomly pick one. And then the other 7 are sad because there's nobody getting elote because there's not that many people who want elote. They need to police it in some way. If they had one hot dog guy, one hamburger guy, one elote guy, one popcorn guy, you could have 50 different things on there and make it like a huge outdoor food court. That would be great. Yeah, make sure that the good ones are the ones that are there. Make the community vote on it or something. I don't know. There's things you can do to make that work out. But whatever they were doing was not cutting it. So I'm hoping that this new change will be good. I don't want them to just kick everyone out, but that was not good for anybody, right? Everybody lost in the way that it was done. So did the shops relocate? I assume so. They've all got carts. They just push them somewhere. And Ethan says, did you go to the local supermarkets? Not talking like Maxi Pali or any of those. Do you mean the mercados? Because Maxi Pali is the most local supermarket, even though it's a Walmart. They're what the barrios have. And then the locally owned supermarket is La Colonia, which we do go to all the time. We like it. It's the fancy Nicaraguan grocery store, but it's owned by Nicaraguans. So we're like, that's cool. Just reading a description of something in the background. Whimsical 2-player strategic tile game. Okay. 1 to 2 players. What? How is it 1 to 2 players? That's weird. My kids are heading to the room to hang out. So my kids and I, over the last maybe 4 days, have started... okay, Ethan says, yes, the supermercados where they have different stores like every step. So very importantly, that is not a supermercado. That is a mercado, a market. When you say supermarket, that turns into a grocery store like La Colonia and Maxi Pali and La Union and Ahora Más. Those are supers. As we don't say supermercados, we say supers, but it's short for supermercado. But to the point where I think it would sound awkward if you said supermercado, we just call supers. When you have the small stores, those are super minis. I don't know why. That's dumb, but that's what they're called. So what Americans call mini markets, right? So like gas station shops, but without the gas station, that's a super mini here. The super has become the term that it's a grocery place, mini that it is small. But to be a supermarket means you have a one single entity like a La Union or La Colonia. So just like in the United States, we're going to go to the supermarket. We don't tend to say that. We tend to say grocery store. I'm going to the grocery store, but definitely regions of the United States still say supermarket. But if you hear the word in English and step back and say, if I said to you, like just take yourself out of Nicaragua for a second, everyone visualize with me, role play. We are in rural Illinois, and I say, hey guys, we're going to run to the supermarket. Does anyone want anything? I'm doing this because I'm encouraging you guys to close your eyes too, to visualize that you're in rural Illinois. You all just pictured that we're going to Kroger or Albertsons or Wegmans, right? We're going to go to a big store. It's got loads of groceries, and you could ask me to pick you up a soda, snacks, a side of ribs, pasta, sauces, pre-made food, like fish, frozen pizza. We got it, right? We're all picturing the same thing. This huge selection, one big thing. We all know what we're talking about. And then if I said, go back, hey guys, we're going out for the weekend market. Do you want to check it out? You all just visualized a farmer's market or something similar where there's a bunch of stalls in an area and you're able to check out different people selling different things. That's actually exactly the same here in Nicaragua, in Nicaraguan Spanish, and in most Spanish. That supermarkets are this homogeneous giant store, and markets are collections of stalls. And yeah, it's weird that the words overlap in that way. Yeah, but they do. They overlap in Europe, they overlap in North America, they overlap in Latin America. So they're the same. Ethan says, oh, I got them confused. I got cheese and clothes from the markets. I had a shocking moment when my friend asked me if I wanted water, and he gave me a bag of water that he bought. Yep, bags of water, very common here. Markets have them also if you're getting water on the street, meaning you're driving through the streets of Managua and there's a water cellar. They'll have this giant bag, maybe a 50-gallon. Can that be? That can't be right. Like a 30-gallon, maybe like a huge garbage bag, but a clear one, full of small bags of water. They're probably 16 ounces. And that's how they sell them. It's 10 cord, so 25 cents, not 30 cents, something like that. And you get it, so you just drive by, you just have a 10, you just hand it out the window, they'll hand you a bag of water. And they're chilled. He's got that. That's why he's got the big thing, because it keeps it cold. And so you get a decently chilly bag of water. You just bite the corner and suck the water out of the bag. That's how we do it here, right? Like, that's a thing. So it's very funny that is how we do it. But so I do shop at the markets, but not a lot. They tend to be confusing and busy and use a ton of time and generally don't have the things that I'm there for. I totally appreciate that I can get specialty stuff there. I can get better prices there, but I'm generally not fighting for saving a few cents on produce, but I am looking for selection and speed. And so what might take 3 hours in the market could take me 30 minutes in the supermarket. Right. So plus, I want to be able to use a credit card. I want to be able to go by the car. There's a lot of things that the supermarket tends to make simpler. Now, I can walk to a market easily, but I can't walk to a supermarket. And I can walk to one of the big ones. The big new one is walking distance for me, which we'll show. So I've shown him on the show a few times. I mean, we talked earlier about the new one near me. I definitely shop in them, and that's how Nicaraguans shop. So one of the things that I talk about is I have a full-time housekeeper and cook. When we want to do market shopping, I send her or Marcella to go do that. They'll go put in a couple hours in the market. They can talk to everyone. They can haggle. They know what the prices should be. Typically, those markets, even the big one in downtown Leon, are mostly your produce, your meats, tons of cheese shops. That's going to be really big. But when you want those specialty lemons that aren't available here, no, it's La Colonia that's importing those. Things like that, you're not going to be able to go because generally those markets or mercados are full of small local vendors that have access to a family farm that's producing cheese or a friend's farm who's producing apples or so forth. And so they have a supplier or suppliers, and they're putting them into a market and selling them. So they're much more like a farmer's market. But they're not a farmer's market. We have that too, and that is a bit different where farmers actually show up once a week and give you a direct from their farm shopping experience. That also exists, and so we use the term farmer's market for that, and literally farmer's market in English for that. So it's a little bit after midnight. We didn't do a long show, but 2.5 hours. We managed to get a little bit in at least. I really appreciate everybody who has been on, and thanks for all the questions and stuff. Oh, Ethan says the traffic is crazy in the markets. It is sometimes, but other times I go into the Leon market or here in Sutiaba, and there's loads of space. If they're better designed, sometimes on the outside they seem hectic, but once you get inside, not bad at all. And I do spend time in the Mercado Terminal, in Estacion. Like, I just end up in them on a regular basis. So I'm always in a market. Some of them spill into the streets. Some of them are part of the bus terminals. So, but do I go to them to do my shopping? No, extremely rarely. But we do. We don't avoid them. And sometimes my wife does, but she will only do this with a bodyguard. She will take a guard and an assistant shopper, and the three of them will go into Oriental, I believe it's the biggest one in Central America, and they'll go do the massive shopping in Managua, and that's where you get like good deals on appliances and air conditioning and like big parts to things, like not just food and cheese like you get in normal markets. They get really crazy at some of those. So she does that stuff, but it's very difficult to do. You can get lost. You actually hire guides to take you through Oriental. Nothing like the ones we have out here, which are still confusing, but you're not going to get lost and like die in there because you ran out of food or something. So anyway, my kids are setting up Friends, which we'll talk about on a future episode, but we've been doing that for a few days. We're already just wrapping up the first season, and it was completely random. My youngest was like, I think we should watch Friends. And I'm like, okay. And my eldest is like, I don't know. And then they put it on, and my eldest is like, oh, I forgot that I love sitcoms. And my youngest is like, why do people not like this show? This is actually pretty good. And she doesn't even like sitcoms. We're having a great time. We're binging it like we've never binged anything before. And my wife hates it. And it's so weird. So we're enjoying that, and they're actually turning on the TV and getting the air conditioning going right now. I'm going to go find myself a snack, grab another drink, and I'm having a rum and Coke here is what's going on. Funny thing at the supermarket at La Colonia. So my wife normally buys Pepsi Max in the cans because she likes the Diet Pepsi, and it's cheaper than Coke, so she buys the Pepsi. The Diet Coke is on so much of a sale right now that a 2-liter of Diet Coke is cheaper than a can of Pepsi. What? So I bought 6 2-liters, 12 liters of Diet Coke, and I have a big bottle of 5-year Flor de Caña, so I just pour myself up a little happiness and have a good evening. So we're going to go watch Friends. Thank you so much, everyone who's on. Reminder that we do have a sponsor now. I can't believe the dog's barking over me. We do have a sponsor now, hostadillo.com. They are a professional web host. You see ads for, all these little web hosting companies and stuff. Those throw you to the wolves. They do not provide full service to do all the hosting for the things that you need. Hostadillo is unique that they provide all of the management of your DNS, of your SSL, of your forward proxies, of your caches, things that other places don't even talk about because they are expecting you to bring an entire IT department to provide those pieces. Not with Hostadillo. They got you about $25 a month starting for most businesses, and that's all you'll ever have to pay with all their services included, including extremely fast web hosting with a lot of power. So be sure to visit them if you want to shoot them an email, hello@hostadillo.com. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can join as people did today. That is always awesome. I love it when people join the channel, obviously, because that's just $5 a month, but it builds community, and it helps remind people to be a part of the channel. Really appreciate that. But you can also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. And of course, get in the comments, say hello, do all that stuff, and I will see all of you. I don't even have the stuff on the screen to turn off the show. I will see all of you tomorrow. Oh, wait. Ethan, I would move, but trying to find a remote job is very difficult. My trick to that is go create your own company in the United States and use that to provide your services onto other companies. So your company is local, that your company's one employee, you, is remote, is inconsequential under normal circumstances. That is the big secret. That is the thing that the people that I know that are consistently successful have done, and the people who don't do that consistently might get lucky, but are always scared or challenged with those things. And I understand that that can be a difficult thing to do, depending on the type of work you do, but it makes almost anything you could conceivably do one step, if not 100 steps easier, and there's lots of reasons to have your own company for that. Anyway, I know it doesn't apply to everyone, but it does apply to most people. And it's a really powerful mechanism that solves, amazing how many people are like, wait, it's like the magic button. Wait, I create a company? Oh my gosh, no one gets to ask me if I'm remote anymore, right? Because you form a Wyoming company and someone says, where's your company? Wyoming? No, where's it legally? Wyoming? Where do you get mail? Wyoming? Where's your phone number? Wyoming? Stop asking me this, right? Where are your employees? Whoa! No. That's not legally disclosable. That's our business, not your business. When you hire employees, you get to ask where they are. When you hire a company to do a job, you don't get to ask where they're doing that job. You can ask But realistically, that's not a thing that companies let people ask, right? They may brag about where their people are. All of our people are in America. All of our people are in Latin America. We brag about that, right? We're not all in Latin America. We're in Latin America, Portugal, and Southern Africa, but we're getting there, right? But we're very proud of where we are, and we do brag about it. But that is something that companies don't have to disclose. It is your private information, and so that can be a really, 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 really powerful mechanism to protect yourself from those kinds of questions. And with that, thank you so much.